The party is in a desert valley with high cavern walls either side of them. They've been on edge ever since a close call with a band of Thrycree nearly wiped them out. They've come to a particularly narrow stretch when they feel a wave of unease wash over them. It's like something's watching them. They hear a faint whisper in the air when suddenly they feel compelled to move further into the chasm. The party's cleric resists the urge and tries to warn the other party members, but it's too late. Rocks come falling down, and the party must make dex saves to avoid it, at disadvantage with how little space there is and how grouped up they are. The party's wizard is pinned under a rock, when suddenly a hulking, rhino-looking creature, maybe 15 feet tall, drops down beside the party and lets out a wave of acid from its stomach. It wields a huge great club, throws it down at the pinned wizard, decapitating him. Will the party survive an encounter with the Braxat? Braxat are today's video's topic. First, let's talk about what Boo tells you. So Braxat are towering carnivores that are around 15 feet tall, which have a thick articulated shell covering their back. They have squarish heads which are topped with huge horny protrusions. Their arms are thick and end in hands with opposable thumbs. They're said to speak in a voice similar to humans. Braxat are said to live in dry arid lands such as deserts, mesas, canyons, and occasionally lonely asteroids. Braxat have the ability to spew acid in a pinch, but avoid doing so as it would damage their prey's meat. Braxat are said to have psionic powers, such as being able to cast compulsion, as shown in the intro spiel, or fear once per day each, and a psionic shield which functions similar to the shield spell. Stats-wise, they're said to be superhuman in strength and constitution, but worse than the average human in dex and charisma. Their other stats are higher than the average human, with their intelligence being an impressive 14, which is a +2. Which is, impressive for what otherwise seems like a hulking brute-type monster. Next, what Boo doesn't tell you. Well, Braxat are said to be violent and cruel monsters, which enjoy slowly torturing their prey before eating it. In prior editions, the breath weapon of the Braxat was a cone of cold, which extended twice as far as the current editions, and its spells were Blink, Confusion, and Feeble Mind, once per day each. The 5e Braxat can only speak Common and Giant, but in previous editions the monster could telepathically speak to anyone within a mile. The Braxat also had a 60-foot cone of a psionic blast which could stun enemies. The 5e book portrays the Braxat as solitary hunters, but in previous editions they would hunt in groups called warbands. Their plan of attack was to weaken enemies with their psionics before entering into melee. Braxat society was particularly brutal, with juvenile Braxat taught to fight as soon as they could stand, with lethal combat being commonplace. This lethality is deemed as a benefit, as the strongest Braxat, both physically and psionically, are selected for in a kind of natural selection. The native language of Braxat is said to be Giant, with only the quote-unquote civilized ones learning Common. Braxat are nocturnal hunters, said to prey mostly on intelligent humanoids. The depiction of Braxat over the editions has been somewhat inconsistent, being that they are commonly portrayed as an amalgamation of a rhinoceros and a hornbeetle, except for the 3 version, which is on screen now, which depicts them as being garish purple and hunched over, walking on all fours. So in conclusion, Braxat are an interesting take on a brute. Giant creatures often fall into the stereotype of being just a big bag of hit points, but the psionic powers really make this an interesting creature. The portrayal in the 5e book of omitting references to the warband makes sense, as fighting several Braxat would make even a level 20 character sweat. I could see maybe a tier 3 in party encountering a mated pair on an asteroid, or as a random encounter while traversing a desert's dunes. If you want to run this creature as a horde, maybe make it a bunch of hatched juveniles who've just survived a raid while in their eggs, or just maybe run another monster. There's nothing inherently wrong with the monster, it's just that the system of D&D 5e doesn't really allow for a party to take on this monster in more than 1 or 2 at a time, and so I'm torn. I like the idea, but just can't really think of a place for it. Design-wise, 16 out of 20, but in practice, I'm going to have to give this an 8 out of 20.